You can see there's a change of backdrop behind me. I'm commentating for the next couple of weeks at the Biel Chess Festival in Switzerland. And, well, round one was played today in the Grandmaster tournament, and we had a major upset. The women's world champion, Hou Yifan, was playing against Anish Giri, a rising star in the chess world. Many people have tipped him to be a future challenger for Magnus Carlsen. But let's see what happened today. So, Hou Yifan, with the white pieces, played e4. That's her favourite opening move. And instead of going into an open Sicilian, she played bishop b5 check, currently quite trendy. And Giri played, well, the most challenging move, knight d7, leads to an imbalance in the position. It showed he was up for a real fight today. Well, in fact, there was another game in the Grandmaster tournament today that featured bishop b5 check. That was the game between Motilev and Wojtaszek. And Wojtaszek found a very nice idea, actually, in this main line. So here Motilev has set up this so-called Marozzi bind position, and well, let's just see this idea. Of course, this is completely regular, and now, okay, of course black normally castles here, but instead Wojtaszek played queen g4, forcing an exchange of queens. And well, if you're looking for a sound line for black against bishop b5 check, then that's not a bad idea. Okay, let's go back to knight d7. But knight d7 has, well, more spice to it, because we're going to get an imbalance in the position. So d4. Well, I should say that this is currently a trendy line for white to play. But okay, Hou Yifan played d4, normal move. Now queen takes d4, so white's big idea is to get a lead in development here and try to maybe open the position. a6, and now, well, the most popular move here is to take on d7 and then to set up another Marozzi bind position here. But it's been shown that black is, well, it should have enough counterplay, but instead Yifan played bishop e2. Slightly unusual, but this has been played by Svidler in the past. And now, well, for example, in the first game in this line, Svidler against Grishuk. Grishuk just played a pretty standard hedgehog position, and this is quite playable for black, because white's queen, as Giri said after the game, white's queen is actually a little bit misplaced here. But he said, okay, today I wanted to play, something different. He played very enterprisingly, actually, after e5. So now we've reached the kind of Najdorf position. And, well, black could play something like knight c5 and then bishop e7. And this is quite playable. But clearly, Giri was, yes, in a very enterprising, challenging mood. And he played d5. Now, his idea was not to recapture. I think in this case, well, white has a lead in development here. After rook d1, I think it's certainly certainly a lot easier for white to play than black. But this was not Giri's idea. He wanted to sacrifice a pawn. Instead of recapturing, he played the bishop out to c5. And after the game, he said, well, I was very comfortable with this pawn sacrifice, but then after c4, just solidly holding on to this pawn, he said the more he looked, the less happy he became. Now, one of the ideas for this pawn sacrifice is to establish a pawn majority on the king side, and that gives you space so that the knight has come to a nice square, and then black hopes to attack white's king. But, well, Yifan played very boldly, in a very straightforward manner, and she played well. And now, here, well, you could, play a calmer move. You could simply play bishop b2 or something, but c5, excellent move. Cutting out the bishop And she's not worried about knight takes d5, because then white simply gets the pawn back. And you can see this bishop on a7, very, very poorly placed there. Sorry, let me just attempt to highlight that. There we go. Yeah, very poorly placed on a7. So Giri tried to stir things up with a5. Of course, if this pawn chain is broken here, then that can well, that could be fine for black. But instead, good move, a3, just holding on to things nicely there. Just let me get that off the screen. And it's actually difficult for black now. Giri thought for some time, but best he could find was to take here. Knight takes e4, and then bishop b8. Now, two ideas with bishop b8. One is to open up the a file, because now there's a pin. But also, of course, to try to start some kind of attack against h2. First looks a little bit scary, but the women's world champion calculated precisely. She played f3. I think this is one of her great strengths. She is basically an attacking player. She is used to calculating, and here, well, she used that in her defence actually. So f3, good move. Now, if the bishop comes back to d7, then actually after bishop b2, white has consolidated. There are no real difficulties there at all. And white is simply a clear pawn up here on the queen side, and that's a very pleasant pawn chain. I mean, objectively, this is a winning position for white. Of course, Giri appreciated that and realised he had to try to stir things up. He played his knight into f4. Well, this is starting to get very tricky indeed. You can see that after queen takes knight, then, well, that's in the line of this bishop. So then knight takes f3 is possible. So I mean, there are lots of interesting captures here potentially for white. Maybe you could take on g4 as well, but then, well, then there's queen takes d4 check, and don't forget there's a knight coming to e2 with a knight fork. So I mean, there's all kinds of things going on here. I'm sure there's more than one good option for white, but the move that Hou Yifan chose was, I think, absolutely the best, and it also kind of cut out all these tactics as well. She found knight d6, excellent move, excellent move. And now black really has nothing better than to exchange this off, and now you can see there are two pieces attacked. So really, black has nothing better here than to take. Now again, there are two pieces attacked. This time the bishop and the knight on e5. So queen takes d6, attacking the knight on d4, and also saving the knight on e5. But now, excellent move, knight b5. This is actually, well, it keeps the initiative going for white. The queen is attacked, and also the bishop on g4. So, for example, if queen b6 check, then bishop e3, and again there's a double attack. Black simply can't escape. So now, well, Giri, as a last desperate measure, tried queen f6. At first I thought, well, bishop b2 should solve all the problems, but this is tricky actually. Objectively, I'm sure white is winning this position. Maybe a move like queen e4 should do the trick, but both players were agreed afterwards, actually, with these pins here, pin on the e file, and also the pin here, and potentially on the a file. This is still a bit tricky. White needs to be quite precise. So, well, Hou Yifan was actually played very practically and very well. She took on g4. Okay, this allows this check, and now the queen takes the rook in the corner. So white has 2 minor pieces for a rook. This should be a winning advantage if white plays precisely, which she did. Excellent move, bishop e3. You can see the rook on f1 attacks the queen here. If the queen retreats to e5, then bishop c5 attacks the rook, and if the rook moves away, then queen f7, it's all over. So it's completely lost. Giri tried queen f6, but then simply an exchange, and now this knight was brought to a wonderful central square on d5, and here Giri resigned, quite understandably. There's a threat to check on e7. There's also f6 is en prise. If king g7, well, there are many winning moves here. Bishop d4 is strong. You could also simply take the pawn on a5. And rook f6 is terribly powerful, threatening bishop h6 check, and, well, it really is all over. So, a fantastic start for Hou Yifan, who's on tremendous form at the moment. She won the Women's Grand Prix tournament recently with a 2-point margin, and, well, she must be very confident at the moment. But it's only 1 game played, and there are 10 rounds in total. See you tomorrow.